Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding a fantasy-themed football management game. More specifically, I'd like to talk about how matches will be arranged. So the easiest way to do that would have been to do it as it's done in the real world, which is that you have a group of teams that play the same sport. They agree that they're going to play against each other on a regular schedule that will be arranged beforehand. So it might be arranged so that every team will play every other team twice over the course of the competition, once at their own ground and once having to travel to the other ground, and perhaps every team will have one bye, meaning one match day where they don't have to play, and then after that there'll be some sort of finals. Maybe the top 5 teams will go into the finals, and the finals will work in some predetermined way. I decided not to do that. I decided to have a system where if you want a match, you, in the role of the boss of one of the teams, have to challenge another team. And then they either accept or decline your challenge. And if they accept your challenge, then we can talk about bribery, which is the thing that we talked about in the last video. But, you know, there may then be an actual match. And I chose to do that for a few reasons, or a couple of reasons. The first is flavor. It seems like in a fantasy world, things should work in a weird, inefficient way. Like the way that it works in real life is, very sensible. It's like the best way to arrange it. But it feels like things shouldn't be sensible and efficient in a fantasy world. They should be weird and traditional and sort of odd. And so you should have to specifically challenge another team, and then they should have to accept your challenge. I suppose I'm thinking about the way that groups of knights sometimes behave, sort of challenging each other to a joust or something like that. The second reason is to give interesting choices, because the idea is that you can challenge another team, and if they accept, you have a match, but that's what you do that week. And if you have a match, whether you challenge another team and they accept, or another team challenges you and you accept, then you don't get to train. You don't get to recruit new people. You don't get to do other things that might be necessary. Those are the only ones that I've thought of so far, but there's probably things like, making sure the ground is okay, or upgrading the ground, or, wandering sages is probably something you'd have to do instead of a match. So there's always a choice there, that if I do have this match, then that's something else that I can't do. And what you want in a game, ideally, is for the player to have to choose between things that they all that they want to do. So that the player ideally should be going, well, I do want to have this match, but I also want to train my team, and I also want to try and recruit this new player before someone else gets them, and I also want to do something else. And so, I don't know what to pick. That sort of decision makes for an interesting game if there's lots of things that they have to do. Whereas if it's a set competition, well, you just have to play this week. That's set for you, and that's what you have to do. And in real life, that's probably a lot less stressful. But we don't want to reduce stress. In fact, in a way, we want to increase stress. We want to make certain kinds of stress anyway. We want to make decisions where the player goes, oh, but I don't really want to not do any of those things. I want to do all of them, and I have to pick one. If you can get that, you probably have a game that people are going to be interested in doing. I also want to have a sort of special way of challenging, which is that you can challenge all comers. You can issue a general challenge, and that means any team that turns up, however many teams turn up, will play them all. And it sort of keeps going until the challenging team is defeated or until they've sort of beaten all comers. And if you do that, you win the game. And if another team does that, they win the game and the player loses the game, of course. And so it's a sort of big gamble that the player can make, and it might have a really big effect, winning the game, which I suppose is the ultimate effect on the game. But it's kind of hopefully an interesting decision to know when to go for that, or if you can go for that. And again, I guess that's based on what groups of knights historically did. There was a tradition for a while in Europe that groups of knights would set up on a particular place and say that they would joust any knight that came along, sort of thing. And there was a famous example where a group of knights did this until sort of all of them were injured and they had to sort of stop. And of course, objectively, it was pointless. It's sort of a pointless, horrible, weird, destructive thing to do. But it was greatly admired at the time. This was a sort of quite celebrated act of chivalry. And I guess that's the inspiration for the idea of challenging all comers. But yeah, the main idea, apart from the flavour, it does feel sort of medieval flavour to me. I don't know how medieval sports works actually, but it feels like something that would happen in a fantasy world to have people going to each other's grounds and sort of formally offering a challenge. But the main reason is to make another interesting choice point, sort of thing, to make another hopefully agonizing decision that the player has. So that's sort of what I've done since last video. What I'm trying to do here is make a document which will explain the whole flow of the game, which I briefly alluded to in my previous video. I haven't gotten I'm not sort of nearly finished that, so I'm going to continue doing that. And that's what I'll be talking about over the next few videos at least. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you. And I hope you will tune in next time.